In this video, we're going to do a bit of a recap of what's meant by net foreign equity, and also have a look at two articles that kind of sum up this whole sort of relationship between public and private debt and what's happening in Australia at the moment, particularly with the high budget deficits. So just a summary, countries with high levels of debt, like Australia, generally experience large financial account surpluses because we fund the debt through the financial account. Countries with higher levels of net foreign debt are likely to see large outflows in their current account for interest and dividend repayments, increasing the net primary income deficit. Although in Australia, that probably should say high levels of net foreign liabilities if we're including dividends as well. But definitely countries with high levels of net foreign debt experience more interest. When you're talking about capital inflow, use that term. That describes money coming into Australia when we take out debt or when we sell off our assets. So try and incorporate that into your answers, that idea of capital inflow, whenever we receive money when we go into debt or sell off our assets. Australia's net international position refers to the total value of our net foreign liabilities, which is net foreign debt plus net foreign equity. Australia's net financial position, the value of net foreign liabilities, is approximately $1 trillion, which basically means we pay a lot of interest on that. If this continues to increase, it could lead to a reduction in our credit rating, which we'll talk about later in this video. That means that other countries will be less willing to lend to Australia. It could also lead to higher interest rates on our debt. Other countries will basically only lend to us because we're a higher credit risk if we are willing to pay really high interest rates on that debt. Discussion questions. Why does a higher current account deficit not necessarily lead to an increase in net foreign debt? Because we may sell off our assets instead, increasing net foreign liabilities. What might happen to a country's level of current account debits in the future if we experience high levels of net foreign debt? Well, we may pay more interest, so they may go up. What is meant by a net international financial position? That's the total of net foreign debt plus net foreign equity, which is our net foreign liabilities. Why might an increase in the unemployment rate help reduce Australia's current account deficit? Because we might import less, and it could also mean that wages go down. Why might lower world interest rates help reduce our current account deficit? Because we'll be paying less interest in our net primary income account, and therefore that can help to reduce the amount of interest we have to pay on our debt. Where are profits received by Australian companies operating overseas recorded? That would be recorded in the net primary income account of the CAT. Alright, some problems with excessive net foreign debt. So we've talked about how much Australia's net foreign debt's been going up by in recent years. Now we're just talking about some of the problems that can occur. Well, the first thing that it can cause a fall in our credit ratings. When we have high levels of debt, other countries are less willing to lend to us. It can drop our credit ratings, and that can lead to increased interest rates on borrowed funds. So basically, if we have a poor credit rating, they will charge us more to borrow funds in the future. And that can lead to more debits in the interest section of the current account, of the net primary income section. It'll also mean that overseas countries might refuse to lend to us altogether, so a withdrawal of foreign capital. Other countries refuse to lend us money because we're too much of a credit risk, and that can affect investment spending in the future. It can also depreciate the dollar because we have so much money coming out in the future for interest and paying off our debt, and there's so much supply of our dollar, which can lead to problems in terms of cost push inflation, even though we know that the depreciating dollar has its benefits. These are the main problems with a high level of CAD and net foreign debt. A decrease in our credit rating, higher interest rates, and perhaps the refusal to lend to us altogether, which hurts investment spending, which hurts our future productive capacity. Advantages of net foreign debt. Net foreign debt, don't think of it as just this really bad thing. Yes, it can cause us higher interest rates. Yes, it means we have to pay more interest. Yes, debt's not ideal. But net foreign debt is essential in Australia. If we're putting that money to productive uses, it helps to boost our productive capacity. We use that money for investing to grow businesses. The government use it for infrastructure. The government use it to grow our economy in the long term. So don't think of debt as just necessarily a bad thing. It's just about whether we use that debt productively to grow our economy. And that we're putting it to productive uses as opposed to wasting those borrowed funds. The benefits of net foreign debt. Increasing Australia's net foreign debt is not always a bad thing, as long as the money we borrow is used for productive purposes. If the money is used to invest in infrastructure, machinery and technology to expand our productive capacity, this will allow us to grow more sustainably. It will help to reduce costs, prevent cost push inflation because we're more productive, increasing our purchasing power because, again, we're more productive and prices go down, and this boosts our international competitiveness. So if we're able to increase our productive capacity, become more productive, lower cost of production, that can be good for our economy in the future, long term, for boosting our international competitiveness. I'm just going to flick to something else within this video. Hopefully it works all right. Just minimize the screen. Okay, that might not work. We'll flick back up to the top. This is just an article that I just wanted to go through briefly with you. And I want you to have a read through this yourself as well. But it's always talking about the relationship between the current account and net foreign debt. So basically it's talking about, firstly, that Australia's equity investments now exceed foreign investments abroad. So we essentially have more of their assets than they do of ours. It also talks about the reasons why the current account has moved up and down in recent years. So I'll get you to have a read through that as well in your own time. What I wanted to talk about is this idea of what's happening with the balance of trade in Australia at the moment. Over the last decade, particularly during the mining boom, the world started paying much more for our exports, and that led to a lot more credits in the balance of merchandise trade section of the current account. The amount we've been paying on for our imports hasn't changed much over the last 10 years. However, the quantity of imports over the last 10 years has actually increased considerably. So the volume of imports has grown roughly twice as fast as the volume of exports, which basically means that even though more money was coming in, more money was coming out. And that was particularly the case during the mining boom because we were spending so much money on expanding our mines and facilities that essentially what was happening was that was offsetting the fact that we were getting so much money for our exports. So there was a lot of money coming in to the current account because we were exporting so much at such a high price, but at the same time we were importing a large amount because we were using so many imports to invest and expand our productive capacity. It's worth noting that it's often the case that in times of high economic growth and strong consumer confidence that Australia has the highest CAD. The fall in the price of our mining exports in recent years has reduced the balance of merchandise trade because we've got less money for our exports, but it's also helped to depreciate the dollar, which has helped to boost demand for our exports. We'll talk about this article a little bit more, but there's some key things to remember. That during the mining boom, there was a lot of money coming in for exports because of the high prices, but since it's finished, it helped to depreciate the dollar and it has helped the net service